Welcome to Celebration Conversations. I'm your host, Sarah Taylor Young. Join me each week as I talk to singer-songwriters, artists, and friends about how they have turned their pain into purpose. Here at Celebration Conversations, it is my hope that you find motivation and celebration in your own journey. Let's get to it. All right, today I am with Miss Jenah Shank. How are you doing today, Jenah? It's so good to have you.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. So we met in a chat group for Christian artists, right?
That's correct. I believe so, yes.
Yes. So how long have you been playing music and kind of doing your thing?
I've been playing music since I was young, probably about 30 years, off and on. And, through my work life and through motherhood, sometimes I put it aside and then I would pick it up. But it's always been there, that faithful friend that even if I neglected it, I picked it back up and it was
Yep.
there. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's quite a therapy I've found in my life, like just writing and journaling. Would you say?
Yes, yes. I
Yes.
um I don't do a lot of journaling. I know that that's a lot of writers do because I my career as a journalist. I've always been a writer, and so my work has been writing. And then usually I just pick up my guitar and I just write a song. So I'm not someone who's real good. I wish I had been, but I haven't been real good at journaling. So I appreciate people who do that. So
Well, yeah, I would imagine probably in your mind that equates to work somehow in your
that's
brain, which, if you're trying to do something therapeutic, it can't be work. Like music and songwriting, it used to be my main go-to when I was upset, like as a teen or something. But now it's my job, like it's work. So I have to find like crafts or something that doesn't have any pressure put on it. So maybe that's what that is for you. Tell me a little bit about your journaling, not your journaling, your journalism background and how you got started with that.
I was always a writer in school and I was always appointed. Even if I didn't want to do it at the time, I was always the student appointed to the student newspaper to write for different publications, poetry, just different things. And I had English teachers who were always submitting my poems to contests, and so it's just always been a natural progression. And I always wrote, went to college for journalism. Been real fortunate because that has been my primary work has been writing. I know very little else, so don't ask me to do too many other things because that's the one thing I can say I am comfortable is writing. And so I became an editor at newspaper, and I've worked in different media, so different types of media outlet. So
Very cool. So more for like newspaper articles, magazines. Tell me a little bit about what you've done with that.
yeah, my primary job for the last, well, until recently, till 2018, um, was working. I was an editor and I was a news reporter for many years for a newspaper. I had experience in radio and TV as well back in the day. So I've kind of covered all, which isn't unusual. Most of us have gone from one to the other, but primarily my comfort zone has been I like to write, and I was always it came naturally. So that's what my main thing, writing and editing other people's work. So
Yeah. When would you say that started kind of budding when you were younger? Like were you in middle school? Were you a kindergartner or
I'd say middle school, some of my
okay.
first, yeah, when I would write, we would receive writing assignments, and I would just get them done pretty quickly. And I
Yeah.
just, I just wrote. But I come from a family of writers too.
Okay.
They're natural writers, and so we have a lot of that in our family where they're just very talented or very skilled in that area. So
Yeah, awesome. So I always like to give some tips and tools on the show. What would you say would be like for somebody who's going to be a songwriter or thinking about doing journalism? What are some tips and tools you would give them to start getting into that area?
I would say, as far as especially the journalism, learn the craft, um, learn the style, pay attention to it, because the less someone has to edit your work, the more likely they're going to appreciate you,
Mm,
and
hmm.
likely you'll be in the paper or in the publication quickly. So pay attention to that. And I will give you, I'll say one of the things one of my very first producers told me, tell the story as if you're, he asked me, he's like, who's your favorite uncle? So, and he's like, well, okay, fine then. And he named, and I don't have an uncle, I don't think by this name, but, you know, uh, Uncle Dave, he said, okay, tell the story, whether you're writing it or you're on screen, tell the story as if you're telling it to your uncle, or is
Hmm.
that person that you most communicate with. Keep it in that type of language, because people are more likely to read a conversation. So
Right, right. That makes sense. Any habits that you would encourage? Like some writers um, say you need to be writing every day. Some writers say, you know, just write whenever this mood hits you. Where do you kind of stand with habits?
I think it does take discipline. And the fortunate thing with journalism is you do have deadlines. So you pretty much know what you're writing. So if you're writing a news story versus writing a feature article, which may be a little more creative, basically the news story is pretty much, yeah, you throw in your own flair, you get a little creative with it, but it's basic bones. You have to
Right,
have some information in that. So, and then when it comes to the feature writing, that's a little more creative. So if you're able to, then balance it. And so, or even if you're my job now in PR and marketing, I like the fact that I have different projects. So if I'm like really stumped and I just can't get into the writing, then maybe I'll work on a graphic, and then I'll go back to the writing and take the break. Sometimes we can plow through, but other times you just need to get your head cleared and always come back to what it's about. What am I doing this for? And what's this about? And I most of the time, like if you're writing that sort of in journalism, you're writing about other people. You're not writing yourself. So you don't insert yourself into it. This is
right.
their story the way they told you. And that's the most important thing, is to capture them as much as you can. So
Would you say it's easier um, to write somebody else's story or your own story for you?
for me, it's always been easier to write somebody else's story.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's like, I don't wanna dig that deep, dang, like, you
Right?
know?
And you
So
can rely on their quotes and their information. Yeah. So
mhm, yeah, you don't ha it's not as much pressure, like, you're not thinking about who all is going to read this. Oh, well, it's just that person that's gonna it's their article, so not so such a big deal. I was really intrigued when we virtually met, I guess, and, you were telling me all the things that you wanted to do through your music. What tell me about some of those things again that you wanted to do.
some of the well, I'll tell you some of the things we I have done is we've used some of the proceeds from my music to help with Native American ministries, and my husband and I, we visited New Mexico, and we just felt called to do that. So some of the proceeds from my music have gone to sending kids to from the reservation and surrounding area to summer Bible camp, and
Wow.
so do I enjoy doing that sort of thing. Last year, I released a song called No Greater Love. And so right now we're in the process of tying that to different outreaches for fallen officers and for military veterans. So, and I've had opportunity with area vets in the region to play at different events for them. And so the proceeds for that song will go directly to some of those things that we're working on there. So
Wow.
I enjoy doing that sort of thing. Um, I still consider my writing and my profession as my tent making, so to speak. And so, if I'm blessed in any way with a certain song, or if people it resonates with people and they support it, then I'm blessed to be able to do some of those things, and
Yeah.
I enjoy that. There are other things I would love to be able to support other other music ministers or other musicians as they go about to different ministries. I spent a lot of time, probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, traveling and doing music and just playing all over the country and playing at different venues and coffee houses and churches and for different events. But I know that that's a hardship sometimes for those ministries. And so
Yeah.
it would be great. And I'm looking at how would we do that? And I've taken it to God, so that's up to him, and I haven't pursued it a whole lot, but I do have in my heart it would be great to have one of those ministries and say that they can come up with $100 to give someone, then match it or provide lodging for people just to get people out there and doing what they can do to minister to other people.
Yeah, that's amazing. My husband and I, we're launching our new ministry, Stepping into Freedom Ministries, and that's really going to help spread awareness and about domestic violence. And I work closely with another ministry called Second Chance Vision Ministry with Miss Judy Smith, and she actually helps those women get out of bad situations. I mean, these women and children, they come out of those situations with just the clothes on their back. They most likely had to escape in the middle of the night with their children. Just horror stories. But yeah, she surrounds herself with like-minded people, to help her to help support her ministry and everything. So it's amazing to have a mission behind your music, and not just it be, all for profit, and we're going to get a new car or something, with this money, which, they have the right to do that, but I think it's more valuable if you actually help somebody with those things. Would you agree?
I agree. I agree, and I don't fault anyone for uh, how they handle it. And I think that you know God moves on us all differently, and
Yeah.
so yeah, and He really does. And I did want to mention too, and I'm sorry I neglected. I'm also involved with suicide survivors vigil.
Yes.
I
I've
had
read
a
that in your bio. Yes, I remember that.
And that's important to me. I play at suicide survivor vigils, and I speak usually every year. And that's because well, it's not just because, but I had a 23-year-old brother who took his own life after he came back from the first Gulf War, a
Mm,
short time after that. And
sorry
so,
to hear
it's
that.
funny. And so it's dear to me too, and recently I was encouraged by a couple of local pastors to put my own story about that down to paper. I've spoken and I've shared it on the news and different things, but um, there's a scripture that talks about um, snatching people out of the fire, and so I relate that to using what we've gone through and turning it around and then trying to snatch people out of the fire.
Yeah.
So where I always in the past spoke about um, what happened with Ronnie, um, I've kind of revised it a little bit now to also talk about my own feelings of inadequacy. And although I am not someone who's ever wanted to take my own life, first of all, I was raised, that was just a no-no, and I took that to heart. But I'm also somebody that at certain points in my life, I also didn't want to be here.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
best way I can describe it. It's not that I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't want to be here. I wanted to disappear.
Yeah.
And so I did write it, and I'm trying to finish it now, but it's basically, just a manuscript that I just give people the link. I'm not selling it, but it really is about how God delivered me from a spirit of suicide.
Mm,
And And you do call it that, even though, like I said, I didn't consciously want to kill myself, but I wanted to disappear. I wanted it at various times, and it's a tormenting thing
Yeah.
for many people, and it was really hard for me to share the circumstances of how that happened with me. And basically, it was a trauma when I was little that it stemmed from, but also at the same time, God delivered me from that.
Yeah.
So that's the important thing. And so if he can deliver me, then he can deliver you. And one thing I found too, in speaking with people about suicide is, yes, it's generational, but it's also familial.
Mm.
And so chances are, you have one in a family, you probably at least have multiple who are thinking about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
mhm.
I work closely with another ministry with my good friend Brianna Dominica. I think I told you about her. I'll have to connect you guys. But she went through very similar things. I think her aunt, her brother, and another member of her family had the choice of suicide, and she had struggled with those same feelings too. And it was I think another aunt who, like, kissed her wounds. I guess she had been, doing some self-harm and things, and the aunt just kissed the wounds, and told her how valuable she was to God and to everybody else, and she said, ever since that day, she's not looked back. So it's just amazing to see how, we can turn our pain into purpose, as my mentor Charisse Voltori would say. Um, yeah, it creates this fire inside of us that we're like, I've got to go help. I want to help. It's a mission, and it's no longer I need to express this. It's I've got to do something to help this.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So, thank you for sharing that story. That's an amazing story. I'm sorry to hear about that story, first of all, but I'm a true believer that God works everything for our good and for His good, for those that love Him.
Yep, he does.
Yes. So, anyway, yeah, I'll have to connect you guys um, soon, sometime. I'm sure she would love to hear your story. Um, Tell me, we kind of touched about this a little bit. Tell me about a time in your life where you think you feel like you found freedom in an area of your life, and you just kind of healed from some things.
Well, going back to the suicide, what had happened was I was a worship leader and I was a musician and I worked with some really talented people, wonderful people. And but there was a point when I was younger and I confided in a pastor that I was just having some issues. And um I wasn't quite sure how to deal with that. And it was kind of uh written off as silliness, kind of dismissed. I don't know if
Mm,
you've been
hmm.
in that situation where someone's just dismissed you. And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a very deferring person to begin with, so I just kind of but I also noticed that this particular pastor kinda started treating me a little differently, and so then the walls go up even more
Even
because
more. Hmm.
yeah, because when people handle it that way, and sometimes people just don't know how to handle it, but
Yeah.
when people handle it that way, yeah, the walls go up. And after that, I kind of went about my life and everything, and things were fine. And I was a successful writer, and I was doing really well, with all of that. And then, little by little, over a time period, certain things start creeping back in.
Hmm.
And I mean, there are other things that were transpiring as well. And so I happened to be at lunch with my husband and a pastor friend of ours. And I never told him about the trauma, this pastor.
Mm.
Um, but we were just talking, and I did. And I shared some information with him and some things that my husband didn't know either. And
Mm.
so basically, I told him, and he's like, "Well, you have I described to him how I was feeling and the different symptoms and signs I had. And he's like, well, I believe you have a spirit of suicide that came upon you at that time of the trauma.
Mhm.
And I said, oh, okay. Well, once I confessed it, and people think about confessing your sins one to another, that you're confessing this big sin. No, you're not. You can, but it's more than that. It's about anything that you have that is holding you back from God,
Mhm.
whether it's something that's happened to you or something you've done or something that's happened to somebody else. When you bring that to someone who truly um, you can confide in, and I know we have to be careful, but seek that person out and pray about that. But when you bring that to that person, and that's what the scripture's saying, confess one to the other. And that's where healing begins. And it starts because if you just keep covering it up and you keep hiding in shame, and
Mhm.
why we feel shame about certain things we don't understand, but it just festers and it boils over, and it's just to a point where you can't handle it, you can't contain it, however you
Yeah.
react to it. And so I did. I shared this with him and my husband, and it broke. We prayed, and there were still some things I really studied in scripture, um, and got my Bible out and looked at different scriptures. Had to do with generational curses, had to do with forgiveness, and
Mhm.
that's another. People will say to me, "Well, you never name the person." I don't need to name the person, and other things that have happened to me. I don't need to tell you. If I share that with you, it's not because I'm holding on to it. It's because I want to help you. And
Right.
I don't need to name that person or drag their name through the mud because I've forgiven them,
Right. Right. Right.
and so I don't need to do that. But once I came to that realization and I did confide and confess what was happening with me, then that's where my freedom and the healing started for that
Mm.
yeah, for that situation. So, and I would say that that was the biggest thing. And I've still gone through certain things. We go through our insecurities, and I hadn't done music to the level that I am now. It's just probably just before COVID, I started getting back into. I had people reach out and say, "Are you still doing music?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not real confident. I haven't been doing it on that level." I do worship for my husband at truck stop ministry, but I hadn't been doing it on that level. Oh, would you come and play? And so, I did get back into it. But part of me was like, oh, I don't know about this. And there again, it's like, well, throw vanity aside. Why
Mhm.
are you really doing it? So what if your hair's a little messed up? Or so what
Yeah.
if, you know, you don't have any makeup on? If God's saying pick up a guitar and minister to this person, you do it. So throw vanity aside. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's a that's a new freedom too, you know.
Yeah, I think we continue to find freedom the more that we help others.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't help our situation, but it blesses us and it like nourishes our soul. Last night, I was talking to a friend who was just really, really broken. And I must have spent close to 2 hours with him on the phone. And he was just, and I prayed for him. And he said that was the best prayer I've ever had in my life. And for him to just say that, it blessed me.
Right.
I didn't really gain anything from all that. I was doing it as part of my work for the Lord, but when you do that, you get a blessing. You really do. It's something I can't really explain with words. But I just felt like, yeah, that's what I was supposed to do in that moment. And it felt wonderful. It really did. What are some causes that you would like to support in the future? If you had if you had like $1 million or something, what are some more causes you would like to support with your music?
I would like to help children and help domestic violence. I would. I would like to help, as I said, different music ministries, and I would like to help on the reservations to provide art supplies and and programs for them that they don't have, some of them, and do those sort of things. And, and sometimes it's one of those things, we just call them Pentecostal handshakes.
Okay.
You see the need, and it might not be a big organization, but you know that this family has a need, and so you just want to do what you can to bless them and help them up. And
Uh-huh.
so those things are so important too. So yeah, I do have a heart for people who are truly in ministry, and I enjoy supporting that. So it would be great to do that on a bigger scale.
Yes, yes. If the funds were rain down, or grow on a tree or something, that would be
But
helpful.
I also realize that there's a reason for certain things, and I know that, sometimes we have a tendency, just us human, whatever, to look at reward financially. But,
Mm-hmm.
God's favor is so much more beyond that, and it's
Yes,
beyond that.
yes.
And, I heard someone's a few speakers recently, and again, they said that, God is not time, but he's a God of order. And so
Mm,
we have a tendency to put things in time, but God puts things in order. And
yeah.
it's the same way with finances, we put that monetary value, but God puts, that favor value and
Mm-hmm.
things. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Like last night when I was praying with my friend and just kind of counseling, there's not a price tag for that.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money that could put a price on that. So it's a different kind. You're exactly right. It's just a different kind of gift that God gives us in our soul, I think. Um and I think, maybe someday we'll have a big mansion in the in heaven or something. He's like, "Oh, yep, she earned a new roof," or you know. So you could think about it that way. I don't know. So anyway, where can we find your music and listen to it?
Um, all streaming sources, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, anything anywhere that someone has that they listen. Um, you can go to jenna.herenow.com, and all the links for the Facebook, for the YouTube, for Spotify, for different ones.
Okay.
You can find that there. And also, if someone's still into CDs, just
If somebody's still into CDs.
because
Yes.
I know there are, and I was surprised at young people who are, you would think that they weren't, but they buy used cars, and a couple of college girls were asking me, "Do you have that on CD? Because I want to use my CD player, my car that I just got." So,
I think
um,
CDs are the new vinyl now. Makes
yeah,
me feel old because they came out when I was like, young.
yeah. So, and if someone, they can just email me, and we'll just send them a CD. So
Sweet, sweet.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. We'll try to have that link on the bottom and everything for you. Tell us how you spell your name so people, if they go to search or something, because you have a different way of spelling it.
It's Jenah, and the last name is Shank, Shank. And my
Awesome.
main name is Ross. I did music before I was married, so that's why sometimes the Ross is thrown in. But if you just Google Jenah, Jenah, Ross, Ross, Shank, Shank, or Jenah Shank, you should be able to find it too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see what God does in this season for your music and for your ministry. It's been a honor and a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Hey there, don't go just yet. Be sure to hit subscribe to be notified of new episodes of Celebration Conversations. Show us some support by liking and sharing to inspire followers and friends alike. Follow me at S Young Music on Instagram. I would love if you left a comment or a review about the episode.